This episode is brought to you by the Metropolitan Housing Coalition.
Did you know that nearly 1 in 4 Louisville households are energy burdened? The Metropolitan Housing Coalition's Every Home program continues to build bridges between affordable housing and affordable utilities. No more than 6% of your income should go toward energy bills, but many families pay far more. High energy bills can force families to choose between keeping the lights on and buying groceries, a choice no one should have to make. Together, we can make every home safe, healthy, and affordable. Learn more and get involved at everyhomelou.org.
So we're here today with Dr. Craig Blair of Peaceful Bluegrass Resistance. Dr. Blair, welcome to the state of Kentucky.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thanks for asking me to be on.
Well, I'm just fascinated by the fact that just sort of like out of the blue, you're not, I assume, what one would call a professional organizer, and yet just sort of out of the blue, this group rose up from the grassroots and is really being very active. Tell us more about Peaceful Bluegrass Resistance and how it came to be.
Yeah, it's really been just kind of happenstance that it came to be and that I had the time to do it. Like I was telling you, I'm a veterinarian here in Lexington. My wife and I have owned this. I've worked in this small business for 30 years full time. We've owned it for about 10 years now, and again full time, 40, 50 hours a week. And just the past couple of years, I've started to cut back a little bit. I've had some problems with my hands. I can't do surgery anymore. So we've got 2 full-time doctors in, and I've cut down to 3 days a week. And I, prior to our democracy being attacked, I had, started doing some other hobbies. I'd taken up bonsai, working on bonsai trees, and I've always hiked a lot and camped, and so me and my dog were out in the woods a lot, and so it just so happened that when this administration decided to attack our democracy, and I had some time to devote to it, and my wife and I have always been politically minded. We campaigned for Obama in both his campaigns. We went up to Ohio and canvassed for him. And so we've always been politically minded, but probably not as involved as we should be. And again, it just so happened, when Trump won the second time, honestly, for a few weeks, I was just kind of despondent. I just had to turn off the news, and I didn't listen to the radio anymore. I wasn't keeping up with the news and stuff. But then when he took office and started his wholesale assault on democracy and our institutions, USAID and the State Department and everything else, I would come home and my wife would tell me the horrible headlines that she had read, and then I would start doom scrolling along with her. And one evening I came in, after a long day at work. It was a Friday evening, so it'd been a long week at work. I was a little tired and frustrated from that, and then started doom scrolling. She told me the horrible headlines that she'd read that day. And finally I was like, I can't do this. I can't sit here anymore. I just can't sit here and watch it happen. And so the day before, actually, on that Thursday afternoon, I had seen a group of elderly activists here in Louisville, or in Lexington, be escorted by the police out of Mitch McConnell's office here in Lexington.
Right.
And that was kind of the last straw for me. I was like, they went in there to see their legislator. They weren't doing anything. All they asked was to see, someone in his office, and they called the police, And so I called a friend of mine and I said, we should go do a sit-in at Mitch McConnell's office Monday morning. And so that's kind of where it all started. He called a few friends. I called a few friends. We decided, it didn't seem like we were going to have enough people to really have a good sit-in. And so we decided it might be better just to picket his office. And it just so happens his office is on Harrodsburg Road right there at New Circle. And so there's a lot of traffic that goes by there. So, we went out with our signs on that Monday morning, and it was amazing, the response that we got from the traffic. We were there from, I think, 9 to 12 that Monday morning, and just the positive response we got from traffic, and just the 8 of us being out there together. We'd been so hopeless and despondent for all these weeks since the election, and for the first time in a long time, we were laughing, we were talking, we felt hopeful ourselves, and then we were
Right.
kind of feeding off the positive energy we were getting from the from the traffic, and we were like, well, that's all great. We finished and went our ways, and later that day, I got a text from a client of mine who had driven by, and she said, "Hey, Dr. Blair, if that was you on Harrodsburg Road, let me know if you're going to do anything else. I'd like to get involved."
Hmm.
And so I figured I'd make a Facebook group to organize some stuff, and that was it all kind of went from there. And so here we are, 160 days later. We've got almost 3,000 people in the Facebook group.
Wow.
We've held over 110 protests, and so that averages about one protest every day and a half. At one point, we were averaging a protest every day. I think that was around the 80-day mark. We were averaging one protest a day. And yeah, I mean, like I said, it's just, we kind of caught lightning in a bottle. I had the time to do it. I had the, energy to put into it. Like I said, I had pulled back from the clinic, and I was, I had this kind of surplus of time and energy, and this certainly has taken that plus some. So
Yeah, I would say so. 3,000 members in your Facebook group. That's that in itself is striking.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
have
And
you?
initially,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, initially we, I wanted the membership to be just Central Kentucky. We had membership questions. You had to request, you had to be invited to be a member. And I really was picky about who we were letting in. We wanted to make sure they were people from Central Kentucky that were going to come out and protest. And so it grew kind of slowly there initially. And even today, honestly, we have 40 to 60 people that come out routinely to protest. But what we found was that as we held our events, and people got wind of what we were doing, we started getting requests from other areas, and now we have members from out west, Arizona, Idaho, Iowa. I've talked to people in the Carolinas that want to replicate our group, what we're doing here, and there are a lot of organizations out there, political organizations out there, but there aren't a lot that are doing these small roadside protests like we're doing, and
Mm-hmm.
and that's really, I felt like, not only did I want to do it to make me and my friends feel a little bit better, but I wanted to do it to educate the community about the atrocities that are going on in this administration, if there's anybody who isn't aware. But so that was, my main goal was to raise awareness of what's going on, and to let people know that there are other people that feel like them, so they can come, get involved with us.
I think that's one of the most valuable parts of it is there are other people who feel like I do, and there are other people who are upset, and they're doing something. So that's I consider that really valuable. I have to ask, since you mentioned that you've sort of expanded the limits outside of Central Kentucky, do you have members of your Facebook group that are in other parts of Kentucky, Western or Eastern?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's, we've had groups now. We've spawned a group in Georgetown, um, you know, Southern Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky,
Hmm.
other groups around Central Kentucky. So I just went over to Louisville Saturday for the 50-51 rally there to help them out, since we weren't doing anything here. And, and I talked to several people over there that want to start groups in the Louisville area, and Western Kentucky. So
Well, are these other
they're-
groups holding protests?
they are, yeah, yeah. And honestly, I mean, they're the ones who, I mean, Lexington, Central Kentucky is a blue bubble, so we're pretty safe doing things here. But one of the groups, it's called Kentucky Resist. They're down in Eastern Kentucky. They had a protest on Saturday, and actually a counter protester was arrested for brandishing a gun. And so,
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the people in the outlying counties are the brave people. We're doing our thing here in Lexington, and we have had that. We have four regular scheduled weekly protests in Lexington,
Mhm.
and for those, I looked at traffic data, and trying to find intersections that are busy, that have good, safe, relatively safe intersections where we can protest, and also that have accessible parking. So that's kind of tricky to find, and
Mhm.
but we've identified four of those. So we do Mitch's office on Harrodsburg Road on Monday mornings. We do the VA hospital out at Leestown. We have a group of veterans that wanted to do something to support veterans and raise awareness of veterans issues. So they're out at the VA on Leestown Road from 12 to 2 every Wednesday. Um, we're at Fayette Mall on Thursday afternoons from 4 to 6 during rush hour. And then on Saturdays, we're out at Hamburg at the intersection of Man of War and Sir Barton Way from 1 to 3.
Wow.
So
And how many do you have, like, normally? You said you've got 60 something people who normally protest. How many do you have at these protests, just average?
it depends on the day, on the site, really. Just at I just came from the protest at Mitch's office, and we had 20 people out there this morning, which is a good
Mm.
number for that site. Very typically out at Fayette Mall on Thursday afternoons, we'll have 30 people or so.
Wow.
The most we've ever had at a roadside protest was out at Hamburg on a Saturday afternoon. We had 66 people out there.
Mm. So have you mentioned about the thing that sort of triggered this was the people getting arrested at Mitch's office. Have you had any hassles with police or security?
We haven't had any issues with security. We have had the first day we were out at Hamburg. We had four Lexington police cruisers roll up, um, and they were um, adamant that we couldn't be there. That the landlord could have us arrested for trespassing. And a lot of this is just like with any other kind of protest, is knowing your rights. And
Hmm.
so, when I saw the cruisers rolling up, I walked over that way, and I greeted them, introduced myself, and when they told us that, I was like, actually, this is all protected First Amendment free speech. I said, we're on a public sidewalk. We're not blocking traffic. We're not blocking pedestrian traffic. We're not blocking commerce. That's the big thing that has come up with our interaction with the police is whether it's downtown at the courthouse or wherever we are around town. They're like, well, you can't block commerce. So, which in a capitalist society, I understand that. Um, but once they know that we know our rights, they kind of step back a little bit, and we've
Mm.
developed a pretty amicable relationship with them. We're fortunate; we have a lawyer in our group, and so um, when we did have a little pushback, she was able to step up and say, "Well, actually, these are the ordinances," and we have another member who has taken it upon himself to reach out to the mayor's office and the Lexington police, and he's developed relationships there. So if there's an issue, he just you know calls up his contact at the police department and says, "Hey, we're out here again, and we're having some problems."
Yeah. Wow. That's that's um, that's next level in terms of protest grouping. That's really impressive. I have to ask, where do you think this is going? I mean, I understand it's of the moment,
Mhm.
and we certainly don't see Trump and his allies slowing down anytime soon. So, where do you think your group and your movement is going next?
When I started it, I mean, just in my head, but again, my goal was to increase public awareness, kind of build a group of people that wanted to be active and engaged, and then as we progress into the election season, have those select our candidates and get behind them I mean, to me, this is all focused toward the midterms. That's going to be our next, right now, I feel like as citizens, our weapons are our voice and our vote. We're not going to get a chance to use our vote for a few more months. So right now we have to use our voice. But again, in my mind, the midterm election is the focus of all this. Having been now in the organizing community for a few months, I've come to realize that for some groups, the elections are not the goal. And we are getting more involved with some of that stuff. We're doing some work with immigration groups here in Lexington. Like I said, we have a group of veterans that are doing some stuff there. And so, we're kind of finding our footing. There are a lot of groups in Central Kentucky: the Bluegrass Activist Alliance, Progress Kentucky, Gathering for Democracy, League of Women Voters, the American Federation of Teachers, NAACP, Kentuckians for the Commonwealth. So there's a lot of grassroots groups in Lexington that are doing stuff. But like I said, nobody was doing this type of protest. And, so we're trying to fill a void that was here, and at the same time not recreate the wheel if we don't have to. So if BGAA is doing something that we'd like to do, we've developed relationships there. And that was probably one of the hardest things to do. As soon as I formed the group, I started reaching out to other groups because I was like, we need to work together if we're going to have bigger actions.
Right.
And at first they were like, who are you? Just, stay back, so it was kind of hard to break through there. But once, we had our first kind of coalition rally in April. And then I think that gave us some street credibility, so to speak. And the other groups started finally working with us and talking to us. And now we have we call ourselves a Kentucky Action Coalition. And it's all those groups that I just mentioned, plus some others. And, we've held 5 rallies here in Lexington now. Our biggest one, I think, was June 17th. We had around 5,000 people downtown for that rally.
Right.
And so we're doing larger rallies about once a month or every 6 weeks or so.
Yeah, you anticipated my next question, which was to ask if you were working with other groups or had talked to other groups. That's very exciting. I'm hopeful that your work there gets replicated in other places, because my experience in the past has been that groups are often very standoffish and want to do their own thing. So have
Yeah.
you had any contact with the local Democratic parties in any of your areas?
Again, early on when I reached out to the other organizations, I also reached out to Fayette County Democratic Party and KDP. And my plea to all of the groups that I reached out to initially was like, I said, we're a protest group. We're doing these roadside protests. Let us be your protest arm. You all do this stuff. And as far as the Democratic parties, I heard nothing at all for a long time. As we've gotten traction and we've grown, they've come around. I participated in the Fayette County Democratic Party reorg in June. I've been to some of their, they have a happy hour once a month get together, and I've gone to several of those. And so, I've got I think a friendly relationship with the chairwoman of the Fayette County Democratic Party now. So, it's just a matter of, again, I understand that, you come in as a complete unknown, they may not want to get real cozy with you right away.
Sure. So there are 2 questions I usually end every interview with. The first one is there anything that you wanted to talk about that I haven't asked you about?
I don't think so. No. I always emphasize, that it's not me. It's, if it weren't for the people in the group, I would be standing out there on the road by myself like a crazy man. So, it really just, it was just an opportune time. And I think people were looking for this. We have a lot of people that will come out to protest for the first time, and they say, I've wanted to do something like this, but I didn't know where to do it, or I was afraid to do it myself.
Sure.
Our artist in the group she's designed all of our banners and some of our special projects and stuff. She and her husband, actually, before they joined our group, they would just go to the end of their street with signs, the two of them, and protest. But a lot of people aren't brave enough to do that on their own.
Right.
And so, we've given people a safe place to come. And I, to me, that, that's a big responsibility, because most of our members are older white people, many of them retired. And so I feel an obligation to make sure that they have a safe space to let their voices be heard. And so, we're very adamant about being nonviolent. We've talked a lot recently about de-escalation, and there's so much in the organizing community. I've read so much in the past few months, and I'm trying to learn as much as I can about how to keep ourselves safe and how to not escalate a situation, and so many things that you don't think are escalation. Even just like, when somebody drives by and says, "Get a job," and I have a job. Well, for the right person, that could be escalating, and you never know when they're gonna show you their gun or whatever. And so we feel, I feel a big obligation to keep our people as safe as possible. And so that may make us a little more, I wouldn't say passive, because many people are afraid to go out on the street and protest anyway. But, we're not the group we're not talking about burning it all down or doing any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's important just to be safe. I guess one other thing that I would say, in addition to the roadside protests and the rallies that we do, our artist who I mentioned, and we've got a great group of creative people, and so we've come up with some like performance protests. And one that we've done is a silent protest called "This Is Fascism." And it's actually been replicated around the country in several other places. And one of our members, he's a veteran, but he has his master's degree in Eastern European fascist studies, and so he helped us kind of dilute the signs of fascism down to 14 signs that we could hold, and that's part of that silent protest. We have another silent protest that or not a silent protest, but a performance protest that we're doing this Thursday in Lexington, called "The Funeral for Our Future."
Right.
And so that's going to demonstrate the effects of his billionaire benefit bill.
So my last question is one that I use pretty much in every interview. So I'm going to give you a magic wand, and the magic wand can do anything except give you a bunch of money. That's the one thing it can't do. But if I gave you that magic wand, what is the one thing you would do with it?
I would probably eliminate hate. I think if, I think if we could eliminate hate, then everything else would work itself out. I'm amazed, but not necessarily surprised at the amount of hate coming out of today's GOP. Compassionate conservatism is obviously dead and buried at this point, and it seems like MAGA and Project 2025 and our modern Republican Party, their focus is on dehumanizing as many people as they can, and whether it's building concentration camps in Florida or burning protein biscuits intended for starving children in the Middle East. It seems like at every step they're doing everything they can to dehumanize people, and they're gleeful about it. They're selling T-shirts to celebrate it, and so I think if we could eliminate hate, then we could probably work everything else out.
Wow, that's a good answer. Dr. Craig Blair, the founder and leader of Peaceful Bluegrass Resistance, holding multiple protests in Lexington and now around the state. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Y'all have a good day.
That's an appropriate ending, I do believe.
Yeah. Beatrice says have a good day also.
All right.